We have a repeat guest on the show this week. Diana Bishop has incredible wisdom to share for practicing health coaches who want to understand how to best support their clients in a way that is nurturing, supportive, affirming, and client led. We do consider Diana to be a health coaching industry expert, and we hope you get as much out of this conversation as we did. Personally, my office is decorated with post it notes featuring some of Diana's nuggets of wisdom. So take good notes here, there's a lot to learn. Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
All right, Diana, we have you back. We're super excited to hear what you're up to. How are you?
I'm doing wonderfully, ladies. Thank you so much for having me back. It went this was like a year ago when we first met. So It went fast.
Yeah, lots happened in the past year. Fill us in.
Yeah, so after we spoke about trauma and really helping coaches understand a little bit better about themselves and going into a session. Remember, I talked about clean coaching last time, going in with your, being able to go into a session and not leak your own personal stuff into a session and so on. And that built out into a presentation I did for the National Wellness Institute in June. I was sort of in your neck of the woods, Laura, in Florida. And so built more conversation around it. And I want to, you all know I'm kind of funny this way, or I'm very passionate. I want to keep these conversations going because what's on my mind is the sense of what I've titled now post-pandemic realities. Do you really know your audience? And I think that this 3 years that we've been, the last 3 years have been beyond the beyond. I never find the right adjectives for this stuff, but I think that we need more time processing it. We're never going back to normal. I wish we would get past that conversation. I want to get past the conversation about stigma and mental health. We need to really dig down and build what I know to be true, and what most trauma-informed people know to be true, is building back the community, building back that sense of trust and safety.
Okay, this is exciting. So, I mean, you wanted to come back because there's this whole new present expression of trauma that is collective in nature. So can you explain it? Like, take us through, define it for us. This post-pandemic, is that what we're calling it? Post-pandemic trauma?
I'm calling it post-pandemic reality. Yeah. Collective trauma has been with us since the beginning of time. Human beings have endured famine, war, you name it. It's just part of how we have been able to survive or not survive, depending on what was going on. But I think currently we are able to understand this in our own lifetime. So prior to this, we would have seen it in a World War II situation where everyone at the same time is going through a traumatic event. Collective trauma is really about how it affects societal functioning, how the stories get told over and over again, how we identify ourselves, and so on. So really understanding collective trauma for me, is the sense of it's a unifying event that regardless of your culture, creed, sex, any of that stuff, it's undeniable that we went through this together.
Good point. Okay, so yeah, the last time, in a manner of speaking, this would have happened would have been a world war. When you just finished describing that, when you described it so well, you said this is a unifying event, which when you think about it, sounds lovely in some ways, like, oh, we all got to experience this together, but that's not the experience people are having. So how can we visualize or make tangible what is happening culturally, how we've changed? Can we do that as a collective sort of consciousness? How have we changed?
So what I'm hearing you ask, you're saying, is it can we make this more tangible? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Is there a way to, we're
Yeah.
seeing it in all different types of behavior, civil unrest,
Mhm.
the murder rate, addiction rate. It's all very tangible.
Yeah.
And when I say unifying doesn't necessarily is not indicative of a positive.
No.
Right.
It just, do you see what I'm saying? And I think some of us want to go in that direction, but it isn't that way. And that's why I want to have this conversation, is because we have a tendency to do that sugarcoat thing so we can get through it, and or that toxic positivity thing. La, 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 la.
Yeah. So let me see if I can kind of frame kind of how I'm hearing this, and tell me whether you think I'm on the right track, or maybe we just talk it out. But a unifying event, meaning we all went through something,
Mhm.
right? We all collectively went through something together. However,
Mhm.
the dichotomy of experiences could not have
Right.
been more varied from people to people. I mean, I have friends, to be fair, part of the quote unquote, like middle class, like upper middle to upper class, laptop class, who are like, oh, I got to like live in my jammies and spend more time with my family. It's been great. Meanwhile, there's people on breadlines.
Yep.
People forced to work when they didn't want to, people who lost their entire family businesses, right? And then you've got those that are, we're stronger together and we need to support each other. And then you've got others that view each other as total enemies, right? Over something that, to your point, I don't know, gosh, we could have just done such a better job. And I don't know how that, but so your question was like, post pandemic reality, do we even really know our audience?
Mhm.
Such a huge question. And I would venture to say, no, we
Mhm.
don't. And how do we tackle this from a coaching perspective,
Yeah.
and helping, I guess, us to collectively heal in whatever way we can? I mean, I don't know. That was just a big blah, but
Yeah, no, this is huge and hard to figure out how to wrap our arms around it. And I think it's fair to say that our conversation today is just going to be like scratching a little bit of an itch, if you
taking out a
will.
scab, I feel
Yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully we'll find ways to heal. Really, it's within us to do, but are we brave enough to be committed to that process? And as coaches, so my curiosity about this whole thing is that the social determinants of health, which we also spoke about last
Yeah.
time, became extremely amplified during
Mhm.
it did magnify where the health disparities are.
Oh, yeah.
I think as coaches and anyone in healthcare, first responders, that this group of folks, us, don't pay attention to our own stuff.
Oh.
And so we don't know our audience because we haven't figured out how we are ourselves.
Mm.
And when we start paying attention to ourselves, we can't say us and them.
Right.
It's not an us and them type of thing. It is truly about me figuring out and being responsible and mindful about what I'm left with here and now, because I owe it to my clients to be clear and honest and transparent as much as is possible, right?
Mhm. That's an interesting point. The us and them paradigm was certainly erased by having gone through this unifying event, but it actually existed before anyway. Like that was table stakes before. But I think what I'm picking up is well, I'm the health professional.
Right.
I'm the healthy one in this relationship, and my client is the one who needs help. And that's the sort of student teacher paradigm we've built. In fact, we always all should have been working on ourselves, but now it's sort of like the playing field has been leveled. We've all gone through this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope I want to invite that as an idea, right? That why can't we allow this be the time where we take a good look and find out, especially, I mean, if we look at the core of what makes coaching fabulous, motivational interviewing is at the heart of everything we do. In motivational interviewing, if you're not in that session as clear as possible, as open as possible, then there's going to be a complete breakdown in what's supposed to happen there, right?
Yeah.
And then we re-traumatize the person. So if we aren't creating a safe environment, if we aren't eliciting through absolute, positive regard for, and so on, in empowerment of that person, then we're just doing the same old, and they're not, it's just creating more trauma ultimately, or feeding them beast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that does make sense. I wonder if you can, I'm going to keep asking this question as somebody who admittedly struggles to like fully understand trauma of any kind. And hopefully there's people listening who maybe are feeling disconnected from it as well, unable to articulate it like you can. I mean, you just can. You have this incredible ability to do it, which is why I'm grateful you're back. So we enter in the coaching session, and we're meant to be this sort of conduit of clarity and an opportunity for the client to have clarity. And we need to make sure we're not cluttering the the experience of that conversation with whatever we're holding on to, whether we're aware of it or not. So what do you think a coach needs to do? To maybe benchmark or uncover or quote unquote diagnose whether they are entering sessions like this? Or do we just assume that everybody is and we have to go and do some work? Like, what do you think? What do we do?
Well, okay, so let's put it this way. I really don't want to create this conversation where people start to get neurotic about what they may or may not be doing. And also, there's nothing perfect. We are not going to go into a session completely clean, if you will. And I haven't come up with a better term for it yet, but really appreciating that there are big questions. We as coaches ask big questions. That's part of our work as well. So I created this list to help sort of challenge clinicians. The first question: do I feel comfortable with difficult emotions? And this is like a thermometer you can ask yourself every day. How am I feeling, today about dealing with difficult emotions? Am I aware of how my emotional well-being is influencing my work and how I present? Okay. Am I open to supportive feedback from colleagues and attendees, or clients in this case for coaching? Have I identified personal biases related to my upbringing and life experience? I'm not saying have I figured it out and have I moved on. Yeah. I just want, do you know what you're dealing with? Right. Do I make recommendations and presentations that I myself am not following? This is a big one. And am I aware of any triggering material in my content or in my speech?
Well, that's a great list.
So this first question, do I feel comfortable with difficult emotions? For me, that's like sometimes, yeah, I'm in a really good place where I feel like I can be a vessel and receive without and then there are other times where I'm like, that is not today. That's a really, really big one. And it's also an argument for why coaches shouldn't take on too much at once, right? We hear this a lot from coaches, like, how do I get a full roster? What does that look like? And there are so many aspects to sort of just that question, and do I feel comfortable with I don't know, some people probably are really good at being able to step away and not let those emotions, not internalize those emotions. For me, it's some days I can, some days I can't. I mean, is that something we should be asking ourselves going into every session?
I think it helps set your own, figure out where you're at. So it's not, to your point, every day is going to be different. Every day is going to be different. And if I just use some mindfulness practices before I go into a session, and if I'm not feeling it, I need to write down what's up just for a second, and then allow it to be there. And then if I notice it creeping in, there's some useful ways to utilize that in a session, because it creates a stronger bond if we're able to say something like in a coaching session, meeting with someone, and yeah, Mondays can be a bear, can't they? And, you know, so today we're going to work together on this. I'm just letting you know that I too have, I just like you, these things can get to me. But what do you think about this for you?
Mm-hmm.
What do you see within yourself? You can use it for fuel in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting because
Right.
I wonder, kind of springboarding off of Laura's comment, if coaches feel like not only do I have to slay all day, I mean, this slay, hustle, grind language to get me started, but when I get on the phone with my clients, they're expecting me to be this bastion of like calm, centered, grounded, supportive. But I'm also a person living in this world. I'm also a human being that's going through this. And I come, so sometimes it's a frustrating day. Sometimes I have impatient energy and I can feel it. And so I think this is useful because in a session, we've talked about this, we teach this, probably every health coaching school teaches this, but it's like, perform a centering exercise with your client. Let's both breathe or think or articulate or share or express or something like that. Let's both, come into this session knowing that we're both managing the chaotic experience of this modern life. And let's both just agree that we're both going to come into this moment as best we can. I think like from an empathy perspective, it's pure empathy. It's true empathy. Client, I know that you're struggling and managing a lot. I also feel like I'm managing a lot. We're both managing a lot. Welcome to the human experience 2023. We're managing a lot. Let's center together. So there's empathy baked in the cake there. And it's also real. You're not being some kind of goofy, trying to be empathic. You literally are experiencing this and that feels real. And I think, and I'm just speculating, for our clients, they like that feeling. This coach that I've hired is not just some wellness guru on high that has it all figured out. It's a person going through this world just like I am. I feel seen.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. There's something very lovely about that connecting moment when they can hear that you are, gosh, not that you have to show that you're struggling all the time, but that you are a work in progress, that you have the courage to keep working it out, and that you haven't figured it out yet, but that you can mirror something to them. You can share something that can help build muscle sets, skills. It's a skill. This is all skills based, right? And that it comes through repetition. And then from a trauma standpoint, what we're doing in those moments that we're identifying the feeling, we identify the feeling in the here and now. We are allowing it, and then we're going to make a turn to try to connect the emotional regulation center to our higher learning, or the processing. I know in this moment it's 2023. You're wanting to, and that it's part of that sharing of the story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's this awareness of where we are right now, post-pandemic now, reality, right? We're here right now. In the process of identifying that emotion right now, do you have some skills or some techniques or exercises on helping coaches sort of clear the decks a little bit in the beginning and try to bring this to the forefront? Or is that something that needs to come about sort of organically through just the centering process and seeing where the client is in that moment?
I think there's a little of both, because I think you've got to have some bumper or some guide rails around it, because it could go really wrong. You got to know where you're going with that. And I think I want to address the fact that I know that most coaches who are listening to this are not necessarily mental health practitioners. That's not what we're saying here. But for your own health and well-being, do you allow yourself to have that practice in the morning or whenever it is, setting up your routine, knowing how many clients you have for that day, knowing your life, the kids, whatever else is going on, making sure that you are attentive to, you are the tool, you are the work, it's a lot. And if we aren't allowing for this experience for ourselves in the morning, whatever that routine is, to be aware and say, you know what, even if I don't have time right now, I'm going to mark down that at 6 o'clock when the kids are sitting and eating, I'm going to go for whatever that looks like, allowing yourself the awareness, and then plug and play. You as a coach should be using the resources that you are suggesting as well. That's the other thing. So many coaches, and we give them so much, but are we using them?
Oh man. Yeah. If there's one thing I've learned in my years as a health professional, it's that changing lives is much easier when you're doing it alongside a team of experts. Physicians, nurse practitioners, and other care providers have learned this too, which is why they're looking for health coaches just like you to join their medical patient care team. Primal Health Coach Institute's Health Coaching in Medical Practices Specialist certification prepares you for that. You'll learn how to work alongside a clinician and advise and motivate patients to change unhealthy lifestyle habits and manage chronic conditions. By the time your studies are complete, you'll be ready to secure a position at a practice that fits best with your coaching style, and you'll have the tools you need to plan programs, accept referrals, and coach patients. If you're a health coach with a passion for helping patients get the life-changing information, encouragement, and accountability they need to make sustainable changes in their health, visit primalhealthcoach.com to learn more about the Health Coaching in Medical Practices Specialist certification. There's so much in my coaching curriculum, which is because so just as a sidebar, I help people with their metabolism, right? Metabolic health. And in my curriculum, there's a whole, nervous system state piece. Like you literally metabolically will not be well if you're constantly hammering your sympathetic nervous system. You have to, for the sake of your health, tap the parasympathetic half. And here's why, and here's the research, here's some science. And I sure as heck don't do that as much as I should. But I love what you just shared in terms of tactics. So the thing is, like, it can become very overwhelming. I find, this is just my personal opinion, I can feel very overwhelmed, which is counterintuitive, by all of the mindfulness practices I could or should be doing. I should be meditating, I should be cold plunging, I should be this, I should be that. I honestly, that's overwhelming to me. But what you just shared is exactly what I do. I will get up first thing in the morning, very early, look at my calendar. Then I take it into a notes app. I'm like, I have a client call, I have a podcast interview, I have this project due. Oh, look, I have 90 minutes here with nothing scheduled. I'm going for a walk. Yeah. Taking my dog. I'm not bringing my phone. I'm leaving the physical environment so I can go and center. And then I have these 8 other appointments the rest of the day. I'm plugging those moments in. I do ask my clients to do that. I'm like, client, please open your calendar, because you can't carry on in this way. We need to find places for you to just quiet and connect. But the thing is, that's easy. That to me is easy. Oh, a scheduling exercise where I plug in some moments where I get the chance to come inside my own head and really figure out what's going on in there. Totally doable. Doesn't have to be this big deal mindfulness practice.
That's the beauty of it all. It isn't. And I love how you were talking about the parasympathetic and so on, that vagus vagal response. Really, collective trauma is hitting all of that for each person as well. And then if it's not addressed and supported in some way, then what happens is then we get into intergenerational trauma in utero. It hits the cells if you're pregnant. There's a lot to be said there, but the piece of understanding is that the simplicity of how to address it is there. People just are really freaked out about talking about things, and now we're at a place that we're avoiding people like, excuse the phrase, the plague. Unfortunately, that our social skills are so darn rusty and or non-existent. We're not, the one thing we need the most, we're avoiding.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just thinking of an acquaintance of mine who's going through a difficult time right now. As well, who isn't? I guess. But whenever I it's just a friend. It's not a client. Whenever I engage this friend and, the sort of typical, how is it going? How are you? They'll be very quick to say, oh, you know what? I'm just whining. Honestly, I just really need to suck it up. It's not that bad. It's just a me thing. It's just me, but it's not. It's potentially intergenerational. It's collective, right? And also, what is this deal with not feeling our feelings? And what is that doing for us? What is it doing when we just insist on sweeping it under the rug? I'm being weak. I'm being a baby. I just need to suck it up. What is that doing for us? Or to us?
It's not a good look. I don't like. I don't think it's working at all. But the other thing is that we are enculturated in this behavior of, well, we can drink a bunch of wine and that'll take care. Mommy's having her wine time. Leave her be. There's so many pieces that our children are watching how we are avoidant of this stuff like crazy, and we won't address it because it's a skill set that people don't have. We're not teaching people. We're not utilizing, mentors. We don't utilize our wise people. We're, old. If you look at those Blue Zone results and reports, we know that having the richness of multi-generations has everything to do with longevity.
Yeah.
So when we cut off all of those tools, the way of healing, we're just stepping on our own. We're making it harder on ourselves constantly.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I always think it's so interesting because many of my clients are moms, and one of their reasons for coming for help is because, and again, thinking through the kind of client I work with is I want to model a certain kind of behavior relationship with health and food to my client, my children. But it's almost like what you just said, it was so powerful. It's like your children are watching you be avoidant. They're watching you sweep your emotions under the rug, put yourself second, not take care of yourself. What if you modeled facing and acknowledging what you were feeling and going through? That's powerful.
But we got to give people the skills.
Yeah. And speaking as a mom too, and if my girls see me upset, they get upset. And so my natural inclination is to shut that down so that they don't get upset, instead of just sitting in it in a minute and saying, you know what, sometimes mommies get upset too, and that's okay. And it will pass. Just like when you get upset, that's okay. Let's talk about why you're upset. But it will pass. The feeling will pass. And I, for one, in terms of the, am I capable and open to feedback, which is I need to stop doing that. If I expect my clients and my children to accept the fact that, okay, I'm upset. Why am I upset? What's going on here? And allow myself to feel it and know that it's okay because it will pass.
Yeah.
And because when you let yourself acknowledge it's there and think through why it's there, and you give it its moment so that the physical feeling of that emotion can pass, then I can think more clearly about what to do about it. And it's much more empowering that way. And I know this through all my health coaching training, and I'm great when I'm on the outside looking in, helping a client through it, but not as great in terms of helping myself through it.
Yeah. I feel like, Dinah, this list is so useful. And again, we jotted it down quickly as you were sharing it.
Yeah.
So, do I feel comfortable with difficult emotions? That was the first one.
Yeah.
So how do you think a person checks into that? I'm thinking of I'm just thinking of a typical coaching conversation where the client might come on and say, well, this isn't working and I don't like it and I can't do it. Like that's sort of the difficult emotion that I've seen to come up against all the time. That's about the peak of it with people I'm working with, but it is difficult. And sometimes I feel frustrated when I get that feedback, but I don't know I'm going to be frustrated about it until I'm presented with it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like, how do I get ahead of it? How can we check in with ourselves to know if today is a day where I'm able to manage difficult emotions or not?
I really don't think that's a fair place to put yourself in, because that would really mean this elevated state of being, like nice, guru. level. So I don't think that that's a fair expectation. I feel like we need, in counseling, you do a debrief ever so often with either supervisor or whatever. I don't see that in coaching. We do not have places where we get what's called supervision in therapy. And so we can't catch it. So what you're sharing, Erin, is that I actually am aware that that's happening. And most of the time we are not aware. If I meet with a mentor or somebody else, we all keep notes on our clients. And then if we meet with a mentor, what have you, and we start sharing some of this stuff, a good mentor is going to hear it, hopefully.
Yeah.
And then they're going to get you on your stuff, tag you on it. And that's how we start to make some changes. But most coaches are doing what we're doing. We're working in a silo. We're working virtually, right?
Gosh.
And we're just like, what'd you say at the beginning of our session or something, like coaches what are they doing to get work? That hustle.
Hustling, grinding. Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
If that is where my headspace is, how am I ever going to be paying attention to any of the nuances? So this is the second part of this whole conversation, which is, do you really know your audience? So we are missing cues left and right because there are times when our clients won't be on camera, right? We say, oh, it's okay. You don't have to be on camera. Sorry, you're going to miss a whole heck of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's bad enough that we're not in person, but our ability to pick up on stuff, just like moms are awesome. Dads are probably good at it too, but we can tell in the voice, we can tell in the eyes, we can just tell when something's off. If I don't have a client on camera, it's almost like a boxer with only one arm, right? So I think there are other cues. You're going to see that resistance. Like if you have a client, Erin, you said, that is like, you hit that wall right away and they're just not going to, that's a big piece of that. That's knowing our audience. So you want to allow for that space. I call it space and grace to allow that ease. What's that resistance about? What's their fear? I think that the other things that we make assumptions about our clients all the time in terms of really what's going. We have to figure out a better way to understand social determinants of health, because if we're making these recommendations and they aren't giving us a full portrait of what's going on in their neighborhood, in their work life, if we don't do that full assessment, we don't know our audience. And things have shifted so much politically and socioeconomically that if we're just asking the standard 10 questions when we meet with people or whatever that is, we are not getting a full picture of what's going on for them.
That's interesting. That's a really interesting point of view. Just because of the last piece about the social determinants, because, business coaches would have a health coach say, you got to identify this avatar client. Her name is Sally. She drives a Toyota 4Runner. She has a golden retriever. She lives in the suburbs. And it's like, we're envisioning this person who's got it all together. Like we're never really checking with the individual to see what's really real for them. We're just assuming this person came into my fold. It must be another version of this perfect suburban Sally avatar client that I made. We're not really taking time to understand, apart from to your point, the general intake questions we might do about like your health goals and, stuff like that. So that's interesting. I really love your first point though. And I think this is a takeaway, an immediately actionable takeaway for health coaches, which is this idea of the impartial peer feedback. So having some kind of a partnership with somebody who you can say, maybe you just bounce each other's sessions off each other. And I had this session and here's how that went. And here's what I said. And here's what she said. And the person who's kind of an impartial listener can pick up the things that in the moment you weren't able to pick up on. So sort of like having that feedback piece, which to your point is not built into the coaching relationship and coaching industry at all. We have to make it happen. We have to create it, coaches, because it doesn't exist in our industry, but it can.
I'm wondering what that would be, some sort of like coach support network or some sort of collaborative, I don't know. Gosh, we should what would that be? What would that look like? Would that, does that, I mean, I would imagine if it was an organization where you could get coaches together, that would be one thing. But for those of us that are working independently out of our homes, in a silo, you have to seek it out. Someone's got to stand up and be like, hey, I want to put this together. Maybe schools like ours can put together some sort of a collective.
I
like-
think the folks on Facebook that coaching practice or practicing coaches page is somewhat active in that way. I did. That's how you found me the first time, Laura, was through asking those questions. I think it's a way to start because can you imagine there's thousands of coaches out there and we've got a bunch of baby coaches out there.
Yeah.
And one of those baby coaches actually reached out to me after she heard our talk, and I'm mentoring her now. I mean, to that point. So I think it's a real open opportunity for older coaches or more seasoned coaches, if you will. We need more men. We need more people of color to provide that sense of reflecting back what's real for people.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, look, Laura and I are on the faculty of a school, and now our wheels are turning.
Right.
It's like, gosh darn it. This is an industry gap. It's a complete industry gap. To me, it's like, even the way I was thinking of it is, I have tons of peers that are health coaches. And it's like, what if we had a standing meeting on Friday afternoon where it's like, here were my sessions this week, briefly. Because otherwise what happens is you get off the session with your client and you're like, well, okay, that's done. Hopefully that works. And you're not, I don't know about anybody else. I'm going to be really honest. I'm not reflecting back. Let me sit quietly and reflect back on the conversation I just had, because I got to get on. I'm not doing that. I have to get on the next call. But if I had some incentive or imperative to do this as part of my coaching development, this is how coaches do it. We do not operate in silos. We just don't. Then I'd be even more presently mindful in my own sessions, but also I'd have that impartial listener to give me the feedback that I'm unable to see. So it feels like a gap in the coaching realm that now Laura and I feel like we need to go away and fill.
Yeah. I mean, I just think what a valuable, I want to call it a community, I guess, what a valuable community that would be. And I'm wondering if that's best kind of smallish group where you've got, rather than a mastermind group for business, just a mastermind group for those that that need space for themselves, right? To be able to create that space and a safe space. Or is it something larger where almost like an AA model, like anyone can join, but at any one day, it's whoever is there and can be present that day, and people step up to take leadership when they feel capable in the moment.
I think we can have some fun just trying something and seeing how that goes. Within the counseling or psychotherapy communities, it's usually a smaller group and or a one-on-one that you do. And it's so important, because I think what we would find with those younger coaches is some, not great habits, and those can continue on, and we're not allowing them to see how the impact they have on their clients. Right. I mean, the other thing is how many coaches go back, after their final session with a client? Is there an impartial survey that gets done 6 months, a year later? How did you feel about your coach? What did you find most helpful in your coaching sessions? There's no grading or research being done about your growth. And you can't keep your license as a psychotherapist unless you are in, my understanding is that you've got to be in supervision to keep your license. So,
okay. When you talk about sort of these baby coaches that are building maybe not so good habits, and then that's just perpetuating because no one's ever really offering to check them. When some of the items on your list that you shared have I identified any personal biases?
Yeah.
And am I aware of any triggering material in my curriculum? So I do feel like this is something as educators, we send new coaches out into the world to go and be coaches. And a lot of times they're entering the coaching realm with very strong biases. And they're teaching to a paradigm of health that they really, really believe in. It's their approach. They believe in it. This is the way, without factoring how that is received by the client. That's actually something that I see a lot in new coaches. And I'm only just mentioning it so coaches listening can be aware of it in themselves. Something that I personally work on every single day. I know how I believe about health and food and what have you, but the person in front of me is a different person and I need to meet them where they are. It's just a trite phrase that we keep using. But on one hand, I see that pretty prevalently. On the other hand, I think that's why people get into health coaching, because they have a specific point of view. Do you know what I mean? So how do we balance that? Do you have any ideas on that?
I really feel that it's interesting because there are so many very passionate people that get into coaching and they're really, I'm gonna make a difference. I want to make a difference and so on. But they're really not taking in consideration cultural competence and so on. And appreciating the fact that just because you're so excited and you feel it's going to go one way, that's not how any of this works.
Right.
That's just your experience. So our work is not to pass on our agenda. I'm not here to give you, that's, my agenda. I'm here to be of service to you.
Yeah.
Let's find out what matters most to you. And let me see how I might be able to walk with you through that. Not because I feel like so-and-so's method of blah, blah, blah is the only, that's not my job. My job is to hear it and then give them some ideas and we can play with those ideas because my way is not the highway.
Yeah.
It can't be.
Right. So this is, I just want to talk this out a little bit for coaches listening, because we do talk about, many coaches come in with, there's this problem out there that I think I can help people solve. And based on my past experience and my path, this is how I solved it. And I want to be able to use my experience to help people solve their problem. And so it's a story that perhaps people can relate to that provides a framework for a general program that may be helpful to that person. And as a coach, you need to be okay with, here's my program. This is the spirit under which I wrote this program. And we're going to discover together how, what, where, and how this is going to be relevant to you and you being successful. We got to get the ego out of why my program didn't work. It's a starting place. That's all it is. It's a story. It's a starting place. It's a framework, which is helpful for many people. It helps organize things and help us think that worked, that didn't, that worked, that didn't, but getting our ego out of it and letting the client learn, I guess, and take from what they've learned, whether something was helpful for them or not, that you can then use as a springboard for perhaps another solution.
Yeah. Whose journey is this? Is it, this is their journey. This isn't my journey for sure. I love what you said. It's, there's nothing wrong with being passionate and sharing your experience, but having the expectation that someone who you don't really know very well, you only know certain things about, is going to play along and it's going to be the end all be all. When we know that people struggle with religious differences and financial struggle, we have to be aware that all of that funnels into who's showing up in your session. And just because you are ready for change and you're all excited about it and it can't go like that. It doesn't go like that.
Okay. So you are working on some stuff. You were telling us before we pressed record that you've got some workshops in the work around this collective trauma as it pertains to what we've just been through. Can you speak a bit more to that kind of stuff?
Right. So on Friday, I'm actually going to have the opportunity to present to our national audience within Kaiser Permanente, the Kaiser Permanente Learning Conference. I'm going to be doing an hour session, and I've got the idea here is just to spice people up, get you excited in one way, or get you thinking about where you are now. And it's going to the audience, that audience, as much as I know about them, is, within that we've got all the different medical specialties will be there because they're trained, the training component. We've got HR, we've got health education, which I represent, and so on. So the variety of conversation, I want to allow people that thought process of, are you, 3 years into this, we need to really get back to asking questions, being involved. We can't just go on we've been on autopilot for 3 years, just getting through. So my invitation is like, I like a learning circle. We call it in Kaiser Permanente, we call it a learning circle. And that's how we do a lot of the supervision or what have you. And our team meets and has this process of, sharing. So that's what's happening. I'm also going to get to meet a bunch of doctors, Kaiser doctors, who are obesity experts. I'll be meeting with them in May to talk about trauma. I get a whopping 25 minutes with them. We'll see how it goes, but it's in person. That'll be fun. But I didn't tell y'all, guess what? I got brave in January of this year. I opened my own coaching practice.
You did.
Get out. Tell us about that. So first, what spiked tell us about kind of what the impetus behind what got that started.
Well, I decided after I'm 58, I said to myself, I stopped being shy. I do feel like I have a lot that I want to, I feel a responsibility to younger coaches and so on, and I need to really feel confident when I'm speaking. And so I decided to move on a lot of these things and presenting. But then I said, you know what? I can see retirement coming down the road. I would love to have this set up. And I don't know many folks that are doing coaching around trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, I need to start small because I'm going to continue to work full time, which is fantastic. But I think there's something else to be said, ladies, about pace. Do you know what your healthy pace is? So being able to, as a coach, make sure that I'm not going full tilt boogie and adding to burnout and then going into a session like frantic. So I wanted to open a practice, small. I have 4 people. It's just
Wonderful.
So you're coaching around trauma. Do people know that they have trauma? I'm using big air quotes because it's such weird language. / how do you reach people? What language do you use to say, I'm the coach for you if?
Yeah, no, I don't say, hey,
got trauma?
My coaching practice is called Walk with Diana, Walk with Coach Diana. But the idea is now, hey, come work with trauma. We're going to knock it out of the park.
Doesn't that sound fun?
No, I frame it around the pandemic and say we've been through a lot, and want to provide a space that you can take a break here and look at your emotional well-being. And decide on how your emotional and physical well-being, how would you like to move forward from that? And then in having that intro session, I share some of the bits and pieces. I think people definitely would run for the hills. Yeah. That's what I was going to do.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. And that's the reason why I asked is because even like this whole, like, are you struggling since the pandemic? And people are thinking, well, yeah, but then there's some people who are like, no, I didn't do that bad. I didn't lose my job. I didn't have to homeschool my kids that long. And it wasn't that bad. No, I'm probably not struggling. Like there's all those people who think they're not struggling because they didn't have it so bad through the pandemic. I wasn't a healthcare worker. I didn't lose my job. I didn't, my relationships didn't collapse. I'm probably fine. It's like those hidden folks who feeling like they got through it unscathed. I wonder where they are.
That's the magical thinking.
Yeah.
I got through the pandemic and I got through it without any issues. It's magic.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But so my role at our schools is talking to people that are interested in being health coaches. And the number of people that are leaving nursing,
Mhm.
teaching,
Mhm.
doctors that are leaving the entire system now that it's over.
Yeah.
They made it through. Boy, talk about trauma,
Mhm.
that they're like, I am not going to be here for the next one and I'm going to take a different path. There's a ton of those people, Diana, tons of them that I know would be really interested in hearing about your perspective and your thoughts on this and how they can take what they just went through and try to get something positive out of it for others, for some themselves and for others. And I think we all can, I think to some degree we all had some level of fear or anger or just a general sense of blah, right, coming out of this that we just are expected to just keep going and pretend like it was just a speed bump somehow.
And that frightens me, the
Yeah.
sense that we just need to keep plowing through and uh, it'll all just settle down. And that's not true. And that's why I think that sense of understanding, I think we need really to be sharing and defining what cultural and collective trauma is.
Mhm.
And because there's that, people want not to believe there's something wrong. I'm not saying there's something wrong. I'm trying to help people understand how neurotransmission works. This is how bodily function. To your point, how do your hormones regulate? People do not understand what's going on. And so it should be a basic course that we teach everybody about how their bodies work. Neurotransmission is the key to all of it. If I don't understand how this brain functions, then I'm wasting time.
Oh gosh, you just actually identified a massive gap in understanding because so
Yeah.
health coaches may have gone down the path of geeking out on this stuff and learning it because that's the kind of people that we are. Our clients haven't, and it's never been enforced or educated, encouraged for them to understand it. So there's such a understanding gap with respect to how the human body works and processes everything.
Well, and it's so interesting because we want to take ultimately, ladies, what I'm so hopeful for is we demythify all
Right.
of this stuff. If we allow, I mean, if we believe in our heart of hearts that mental health and emotional well-being, physical well-being are all a part of a bodily
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
our body working in harmony. We have to teach people what that really means. It's not that you need to be a neuroscientist or a psychiatrist. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about understanding basic brain function. And everyone, I will tell you this. One of the things that has been a huge blessing in my coaching is that when I've spent a little bit of time with people, they'll notice that I'm able to translate what's been going on for them. So really what happens is people feel like one way and that they're horrible and weak or nothing happened to me or whatever. And then when we explore it a little bit more, we're able to connect the dots and understand really what's been going on. So that
Mhm.
translating, because people are full of fear or bias about anything concerning the brain, that's really where the work is.
I'm so glad that you wrote us to say, like, hey, we need to start having this conversation because we're not. We're kind of sweeping it under the rug and pretending like we're on the other side and we're not.
Yeah.
And the opportunity, ladies, this is not another chore. This is not another, oh, good
Mhm.
Lord, how am I going to get? This is really the simplicity of a conversation like this
Mhm.
and inviting conversation and connection. I can't tell you how important it is for us to allow space and grace for people to share. That's it. That's how it starts.
Yeah. And that is coaching. That's what differentiates coaching from the personal trainer dispensing meal plans at the gym. Like that's why I think we got into this. We got into this because we wanted to be client centered. We wanted to we want to be able to roll with what's present for a person's lived experience of health and happiness, right? So I just think that is coaching by definition, and that's why we're here. So unfortunately, we all had to come through this collective trauma, first one in a generation or two. And here we are now, right? We're here now. We're all here now. So coaches, step up to the plate and meet these clients with what they need to be met with.
So how do we keep the conversation going?
Well, isn't that the $1 million question?
Yeah.
I think that I would still love to see a way to take some of the social media pieces for coaches and connect us a little bit better. I think it would be worthwhile to find out from our community, do a needs assessment on them. It'd be real interesting to do a needs assessment on them. And so, the energy, initially people are going to say, I don't have time for this, but we're not talking about a time commitment per se. We're talking about an opportunity to feel better. And coaches need to receive.
Yeah.
Coaches need to receive.
Yeah. I hope that you saying that, as you've said it a couple of times, like it does sound like it's going to take time or it's a hassle or another thing on your to-do list, but honestly zoom out and consider why this is necessary, and not just a thing you put on a to-do list and check off, but something you have to fully just immerse into to fully understand yourself and then therefore the people around you. So, I do think that kind of what like Laura and I are both like eager for is like a tool, a resource, a protocol. Give us a thing that we can do, a book, something, to put into.
We talk about as a team, now that we can get together in person now, we'll be attending some events, and Erin and I have kind of put Primal Health Coach Institute and just offered to be a conduit at some of these health events specifically for health coaches, where we've got breakout sessions, meetups, and things where health coaches can kind of get together. We would love to do some sort of live event ourselves if we can get our act together. That's just because we were talking as a team, like I can't think of a national or a nationwide conference just for health coaches, not nutrition professionals, not, health coaches. I don't think it exists.
I haven't seen it either.
Yeah.
And my thing is, I did a post last week on LinkedIn. I said, come have a cup of tea with me. Come have a cup of tea. Let's get together and have a little tea.
Yeah. Maybe that's how it starts, right? Smaller.
I think so.
Zoom groups that we can, grow. So I love it. Thank you so much, Diana.
Oh my gosh, it's a pleasure, ladies. I hope this was useful.
Yeah, I think so. But we want to kind of follow what you're doing. So your practice is Walk with Diana. Is that what you said?
Walk with Coach Diana. There's a Facebook page for it. And people can find me on LinkedIn and all that good stuff.
Thank you again. As always, lovely conversation. We could have kept going. So it's always the sign of a good conversation when you don't want to stop.
Thank you so much for your time, ladies. It's always a joy to be with you. Let's keep connected, and it's good work. It's really good work. Thank you.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.